Have you ever noticed how peace fades when you're constantly second-guessing someone's presence in your life? Have you ever felt like you're always reaching, but they never reach back? That's not love. That's a lesson. One of the hardest truths we'll ever have to face is this: people who genuinely care about you are not perfect, but they are consistent. You don't have to wonder where you stand with them. You don't have to decode mixed signals. Their love may not come in fireworks or fancy words, but it shows up in the quiet moments, in the stormy seasons, and in the places where most people vanish. But when someone doesn't care, really doesn't care, their inconsistency is the loudest truth they'll never say. I'm not talking about someone going through a tough time or missing a call once in a while. I'm talking about emotional absenteeism, when they act like a stranger in moments that matter. One day, they're warm and available. The next, it's like you never existed, and you're left asking, what did I do wrong? Friend, that's not love. That's confusion wearing perfume. And God, He's not the author of confusion. So if you find yourself constantly overthinking, walking on eggshells, or twisting yourself into emotional knots just to stay in someone's life, it's time to pause and ask, why am I chasing someone who keeps letting go of me? Real care doesn't keep you in limbo. It doesn't silence your voice. It doesn't leave you gasping for clarity. Love, in its truest form, is steady, predictable, safe. It doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. It doesn't punish you with silence. It doesn't ghost you and then return when it needs something. See, the enemy uses inconsistency like a silent weapon. One moment you feel held, the next discarded. It starts small, a missed reply here, a forgotten promise there. But over time, it erodes your spirit. And suddenly you're questioning not just them, but your worth. Hear this: you deserve presence, not performance. You deserve peace, not confusion. And you deserve people who stay, not because it's easy, but because they care. Consistency isn't flashy. It's faithful. It's the check-in on your worst day. It's the reply when your heart feels hollow. It's the unspoken, "I've got you," when you're too tired to ask. That's love. That's commitment. But when someone only shows up when it suits them, when their timing aligns with their own needs, you're not being valued, you're being used. That's not care. That's control. That's someone managing access, not offering connection. And God didn't create you to be someone's afterthought. He knit you with intention. He crowned you with dignity. And if someone keeps treating you like an option, know this: to God, they were only ever meant to be temporary. Picking up where we left off, let me say this clearly: stop holding on to people who keep changing the terms of your worth. Stop chasing after someone who makes you feel like you're only lovable when you're silent, small, or shrinking. If someone were truly sent by God, they wouldn't keep leaving you questioning your value. You wouldn't feel like you're constantly walking on emotional eggshells, tiptoeing around their moods just to keep the peace. No. If they were really from God, you'd feel seen, not invisible. You'd feel safe, not on edge. You'd feel chosen, not tolerated. And to the one who's been clinging to the memory of how they used to treat you, please hear me. The version you fell for might not have been the real them. That kindness, that attention, that tenderness, it may have only been a mask, not a mirror of their true character. You can't keep replaying those sweet early days in your head while ignoring the pattern of emotional neglect that's followed you for months, or even years. That inconsistency isn't a mystery to solve. It's a red flag to run from. And don't let anyone fool you into thinking their absence is just them being complicated. No, it's not complexity. It's carelessness. It's someone who refuses to honor your time, your emotions, your worth. If someone is playing tug-of-war with your peace, let go of the rope. Stop letting them pull you back into cycles of hope and heartbreak, because every time you tolerate the back and forth, you're silently teaching them you can come and go as you please. You can disappear and I'll still wait. You can love me only when it's convenient, and I'll still call it love. But that's not love. That's torment dressed in affection. And let me say this gently but firmly. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You're not overthinking. You're not dramatic or needy. You're just handing your heart to people who never learned how to hold anything sacred. Maybe today, the deepest healing you can step into is this. Stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop wasting words on those who've already decided who you are in their minds, because the people who truly love you won't need convincing. Real care is steady. It shows up when life gets messy. It listens when your soul speaks in tears or trembles. It doesn't evaporate when you're no longer useful or cheerful or easy to deal with. There's a different kind of pain, not from screaming matches or slammed doors. No, this pain is quiet. It sneaks in when your voice is met with cold glances, when your presence feels like a burden, when you share your heart and are met with rolled eyes and shifting bodies. That's the moment you need to stop blaming yourself. Because when someone doesn't care about you, they may not say it with words, but their silence speaks volumes, their distance speaks louder. And the emotional void they leave? That's the clearest sign that love has left the room. God did not design you to tiptoe through relationships hoping to earn crumbs of affection. You were made to stand tall in love that's mutual, gentle, and honest. Love does not treat you like an inconvenience. And anyone who avoids your emotions like a disease does not have the capacity to cherish your heart. You were never too much. You were simply too real for someone who was never ready to be honest with themselves. And as we continue from there, let's talk about something more subtle. The quiet ways people make you feel like your needs are too much. They won't say it directly, but their tone, their eye rolls, their silence, it whispers the same message. You're asking for too much. But let me tell you the truth right now, you're not asking for too much. You're asking for the most basic human dignity, respect, presence, understanding. Things that should never be optional in a relationship that claims to care. Somewhere along the way, this world convinced you that needing connection is a weakness, that expecting consistent kindness makes you needy. But God never said that. In fact, His word says, "Cast your cares on me because I care for you." And that's the standard. Care that looks like caring, not criticizing. Love that leans in, not pulls away. I know there are some of you watching this who have poured your heart into conversations with people who only offer blank stares. You've opened up, hoping to be heard, only to realize they were just waiting for their turn to speak. And somehow, after pouring your soul out, you leave feeling even more alone than before. That's not care. That's not presence. That's proximity without compassion. True care sees you, feels you, stays with you. When someone genuinely cares, you won't have to shout your pain. They'll feel the shift in your voice. They'll notice the heaviness in your silence. They'll lean in when your hands start to tremble. You won't have to shrink. You won't have to apologize. You won't have to earn their attention. You just have to be. And they'll hold that space with gentle grace. That's what love looks like. It doesn't flinch at your scars. It tends to them. It doesn't flee in your weakness. It stays especially in your silence. It doesn't need your perfection. It embraces your humanity. And I want to speak now to the one who's been carrying everything. You've been holding the friendship, the relationship, the family connection all on your own. You've made the calls, you've initiated the texts, you've planned the visits, offered the apologies, kept the peace. And when you finally needed someone to check on you, there was no one. No one called, no one noticed. That's not a relationship. That's a responsibility you never signed up for. That's an imbalance that leads straight to emotional starvation. God never called you to survive off crumbs of affection or leftovers. Of attention. If someone makes you question whether your heart is welcome, they've already answered your question. You are not difficult to love. You are simply giving love to people who don't have the desire or capacity to give it back. Some of you are still waiting. Waiting for the apology that never comes. Waiting for someone to finally acknowledge your effort. Waiting for them to show up with the same consistency you've been offering for years. But hear me clearly. You don't need closure from someone who never offered care. You don't need their permission to stop carrying a relationship. They refuse to carry with you. Walking away is not a sign of bitterness. It's a sign of wisdom. It's a sign of healing. And think about Jesus. When the hurting came to him, he didn't roll his eyes. He didn't sigh with inconvenience. He didn't ghost them because their pain was too heavy. He met them with compassion, with presence, with tenderness. If the people in your life can't offer even a fraction of that, then something is deeply off. Sometimes the people who make you feel like a burden are simply revealing how little they value themselves. But that doesn't make it your job to fix them or accept less. Your needs are not a nuisance. Your heart is not an inconvenience. You are not too much. You are enough. And your soul deserves to be held with the same kindness you give so freely to others. So if you've been feeling like you're too sensitive, too emotional, or too deep, stop and ask, why am I still handing my heart to someone who doesn't know how to handle it? Because who shows up when life gets quiet? Who listens when there's nothing in it for them? Who stays when there's no spotlight, no convenience? That's who truly cares. And continuing from that painful realization, let's talk about when people only come around to take, not to give. You've seen it, felt it, lived it. The silence that stretches for weeks, months, even years. No texts, no calls, not even a quick "how are you" on a rainy Tuesday. But then, suddenly, they reappear, out of nowhere. A message lights up your phone, and for a moment your heart lifts. Maybe they've changed. Maybe they're checking in this time because they care. But deep down, you already know. It's not about you. It's about what they need from you, not your soul, not your heart, not your healing, just your help. They don't call to see if your spirit is weary or if you need encouragement. They call because they want something, a favor, a loan, a connection, a way out of their own mess. They show up not as friends, but as opportunists. They're not seeking your presence, they're seeking your resources. And every time you pick up that phone, you feel it, the ache, that deep, silent ache in your chest, because part of you still hopes. Maybe this time, maybe they really missed me. But what they missed wasn't you. They missed your generosity. They missed the convenience of your compassion. They missed the way you always answered, even when you were the one bleeding. That's not relationship. That's extraction. That's turning your heart into a rest stop, somewhere they come to refill and then vanish. And you're left. Empty, you've become their gas station on the way to someone else's journey. They show up to lighten their burden, never to help carry yours. Let me ask you this honestly. Where are they when you need something, when your mind is tired, when your tears won't stop? When all you want is for someone to say, I've got you nowhere, and Jesus didn't teach us to live like this. He said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That means reciprocity, not martyrdom. That means care should flow both ways, not just one. You're not called to be a well others keep drawing from without ever bringing water of their own. That's not mercy, that's misalignment. And I know it's hard to admit when someone you love is only using you. You remember the good times, the laughter, the conversations, the promises, but memory is not love. What they were then isn't who they are now. Some people stopped choosing you long before they stopped calling. They kept showing up out of habit, not out of heart. Their body's still present, but their intention packed up and left a long time ago, and it's time to stop ignoring the patterns. If they only appear when they're in crisis, if they vanish the moment you need them, if your presence is only valuable when it benefits them, that's your answer. Don't let fear of being alone trap you in emotional slavery. There's a kind of loneliness worse than solitude. It's being surrounded by people who never truly show up for you. You walk on eggshells, you wait for them to change. You keep giving, hoping someday they'll give too, but they don't, and you're exhausted. Because you were never meant to be a one-person support system for someone who doesn't even lift a finger for you. You've gotten so used to giving, so used to stretching, so used to sacrificing, that you've forgotten what it feels like to receive. You've forgotten how it feels to be poured into rather than always pouring out. Let me remind you of something simple, something sacred. You are not just here to serve everyone else's survival. You were created to thrive, to be loved, to experience mutuality, not manipulation. So the next time your phone lights up and your heart hesitates, ask yourself, is this care or is this collection? Is this connection or is this convenience? Because the difference matters, and so do you, and if you've been giving endlessly without return. It's time to ask a difficult question. What if they were never planning to give at all? It's not because you failed. It's not because your love was too much. It's because some people walk into your life not to build with you, but to take what you've already built. Let's be honest. The enemy loves relationships like that, where one heart is constantly exhausted and the other feels endlessly entitled, where one soul is investing with faith and the other is withdrawing with no intent to replenish. You think it's a connection, but what it really is a slow drain, a silent erosion of your energy, your joy, your divine focus, and that's the trap. Because while you're pouring everything into someone who was only ever meant to pass through, you're being distracted from the people and the purpose God actually assigned to you. Listen carefully to this truth. You are not a backup plan. You are not someone's safety net, their soft place to land when they've burned all their bridges. You are not their emotional fixer. You are not their therapist, their emotional crutch, or their emergency escape route. You are a child of the Most High God, formed in His image, woven with purpose, called by name, and anyone who doesn't honor that truth in you was never meant to stay. Maybe they were a moment, maybe they were a mirror, maybe they were a lesson, but they were not your lifetime, and certainly not your burden. God doesn't send people into your life to drain you. He sends people who build you, people who sharpen your wisdom, people who challenge you with love, people who pray with you, walk with you, speak truth, even when it's hard. And here's the sign. If someone only calls when they need you, but goes silent when you need them, that's not your person. That's not your team, that's not your tribe, and you don't have to be rude, you don't have to be bitter, but you do have to be wise. Sometimes wisdom looks like this, closing the door, not with anger, but with peace. Not because you're cold, but because you've warmed everyone else's life while freezing in your own. Let's talk about silence, because silence, it speaks, and sometimes it screams. You reach out. You initiate, you speak with sincerity, and all you get back is nothing, no reply, no explanation, no effort, and then come the doubts. Did I do something wrong? Was I too much? Am I not worth a response? But hear this, silence is an answer. When someone cares, they don't leave you wondering. They don't ignore your presence and expect to keep your heart. There's a cruelty in silence, a quiet, cutting dismissal that says, you're not worth the energy. And that is not love. That is not care. That is not the fruit of someone who values you, because God, our Father, He's never silent in our pain. He doesn't ignore our prayers. He doesn't leave us on read. He responds. He listens. He cares. That's the standard. That's the model. And if someone repeatedly withholds the most basic respect, if they disappear when it's inconvenient, go silent when your heart is exposed, turn cold when you reach out in vulnerability, that is not your cue to run after them. That is your sign to choose you. Let me say this with love but with truth. You cannot force honor where there is none. You cannot demand dignity from someone who refuses to see it in you. Sometimes people will call their emotional absence boundaries. They'll say things like, "I needed space," or "I'm just protecting my peace." But what they're really doing is avoiding accountability. They're not setting boundaries. They're building walls to hide behind while they slowly dismantle your confidence. Don't confuse distance with dignity. There's a difference between someone taking time to heal and someone taking time to hurt you quietly. So if they keep vanishing, if they treat your voice like background noise, if your heart feels more like an inconvenience than a treasure, then let that silence settle. Let that unanswered message stay unread, not because you're giving up, but because you're growing up. You don't need to fight for someone who was never fighting for you. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong person. And when someone makes silence their language, let that silence be your answer. You see, some people believe that by ignoring you, they hold power over your emotions, that by withholding a reply, they control your thoughts. But the truth is, there's no power in indifference, only the cold echo of a connection that has died. And when love turns cold, when the warmth you used to feel becomes a distant memory, it is no longer safe to keep trying to rekindle a fire that's already burned out. You cannot keep warming yourself at ashes. You must walk away before that. Coldness burns you. You deserve more than uncertainty. You deserve more than staring at your phone wondering, did they see it? Do they care? Am I still wanted? The answer shouldn't require decoding. Real care never hides behind silence. You deserve someone who answers not out of obligation, but because they genuinely want to hear from you. Someone who honors your presence with attention, who values your voice enough to respond even when it's inconvenient. Someone whose consistency is proof of care, not a rare exception. Let this sink in. Your heart is not too much. Your effort is not excessive. Your desire for connection is not a weakness. If someone makes you feel like you're too heavy to carry, it's not because you're broken. It's because they refuse to carry anything that requires effort. Some people don't go silent because they're overwhelmed. They go silent because they no longer see value in engaging. You are no longer useful to them. And as painful as that sounds, it's something you must receive in truth and then release with grace. Don't keep sending your words into a space where your voice is treated like background noise. Don't keep calling people who have already sent you to emotional voicemail. If they can see your name on their screen and feel nothing, that tells you everything you need to know. If your message can be read and forgotten within seconds, that's not miscommunication. That's misalignment. Stop justifying their silence. Stop rewriting their indifference into kindness. Stop knocking on doors that God Himself has already closed to protect you, because when God wants to remove someone, He won't always rip them out of your life. Sometimes He simply allows their true colors to show. Through their silence, their absence, their apathy, silence reveals. It strips away the performance. It exposes what they prioritize. It shows you exactly who stands in your corner and who just drops by when it's convenient. There is a sacred peace in releasing one-sided communication, in laying down the heavy weight of hoping they'll respond, in letting go of people who were never planning to answer anyway. Being ignored doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means you're being freed to find where your presence is honored, because when people stop caring, it doesn't always look like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like a slow fade, not loud words, not slamming doors, but a gradual silence. A voice that used to sound excited now dulls. A glance that used to see you now looks through you. A heart that used to reach for yours now remains untouched by your pain. And here's the most heartbreaking part. When your tears no longer move them, when your suffering no longer pulls them closer, but instead pushes them further away, when you share your story and they meet it not with empathy but with apathy, or worse, annoyance, that's how you know. That's how you know they're no longer invested. Because a person who truly cares doesn't flinch at your wounds. They lean in, they ask, they listen, they reach, not for solutions, but for your hand, your heart, your healing. But when someone doesn't care, your pain becomes a nuisance, a background hum in the soundtrack of their self-centeredness. And nothing hurts more deeply than pouring out your soul, only to realize it's falling into an echo chamber of indifference. Not even the loudest argument can compare to the pain of being unheard when you were most vulnerable. But take heart, because when Jesus walked this earth, he didn't step over the broken. He stopped. He paused for the weary, the hurting, the bleeding, the shunned. He made time for the woman with the issue of blood. He heard the blind man's cries. He saw the pain in the overlooked. He moved toward the hurting, never away from them. That is what true love does. That is the standard. So if they're turning away from your pain, if they've grown cold to your voice, know this: it is not a reflection of your value. It is a revelation of theirs, and you, dear friend, are not meant to settle for coldness when God himself offers you a love that burns with compassion. And just like that, when your soul cries out, the silence from others tells you everything. Jesus never ignored the broken. He never walked past the cries of the desperate. He didn't pretend not to hear Bartimaeus shouting from the roadside. He didn't rush past the woman who had been bleeding for years. He didn't look the other way when pain came near. He paused. He turned. He responded. That's what love does. Love leans in when pain rises up. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't retreat. It doesn't call you too much or brush your trembling voice aside. So if someone constantly avoids your sadness, shrinks away from your anxiety, minimizes your trauma, or deflects your tears, you are not looking at love. You are staring into the face of someone whose soul is no longer aligned with yours, because it's easy to love someone when they're smiling. It's effortless to sit at the table when the room is filled with laughter and light. But the depth of a relationship isn't proven in the feast. It's revealed in the fire. Who shows up when the lights go out? Who stays when your strength disappears? Who listens when your words tremble and your eyes are too tired to hide the truth? That's the measure of love. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet presence. Not in perfect solutions, but in consistent compassion. And sadly, there will be people who once claimed to love you, who once clung to your light, who will turn cold the moment your light dims. They'll call your vulnerability drama. They'll label your sadness as too much. They'll meet your trembling with silence, your wounds with judgment, and your cry for support with absence. That's when the truth becomes undeniable. You were never truly safe with them, because real love cannot stay unmoved by suffering. It doesn't watch you fall and simply step over you. It doesn't grow quiet when you finally ask for what you've so freely given. Some of the very people you lifted up, the ones you encouraged when they were low, stood beside when they were crumbling, and poured into when they had nothing left, will disappear when it's your turn to lean. That's not love. That's not loyalty. That's convenience dressed up in empty promises. But friend, don't let their apathy harden your heart. Don't let their emotional absence drain the beauty from your spirit, because your compassion is holy, your sensitivity is sacred. Your ability to feel deeply, to see pain in others, and reach out with kindness. That is not your weakness. That is Christ alive in you. Don't bury it because someone else failed to honor it. Their refusal to respond says more about their limitations than your value. Some people are emotionally unavailable. Some are too consumed with themselves to offer space for anyone else. Some are so wounded they don't know how to handle another person's pain, but that's not on you. Stop trying to explain your feelings to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. Stop reopening old wounds for people who never came with healing hands. Stop staying just because you're afraid of walking alone. There's nothing holy about staying in broken company. There's no virtue in begging for comfort in places where you're only met with coldness. If someone can witness your pain and feel nothing, they were never meant to walk with you into healing. You can't force someone to care, no matter how much you've given, no matter how many memories you share, no matter how deeply you've loved. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourself is to let go, because God will send people who don't just tolerate your wounds, but help bind them. People who stay when your joy fades. People who sit beside your sorrow without rushing to fix it. People who see your tears as sacred, not inconvenient. Those are the ones sent by God. They reflect His heart when yours is breaking, and you deserve that. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be comforted, not silenced. You deserve to be in spaces where your sadness isn't a problem to solve, but a reason to draw closer. That's what real love feels like. That's what real care looks like. And if someone needs to be begged to provide that, if their comfort has to be requested, if their attention only comes when they have something to gain, then you already have your answer. Because here's one of the clearest signs of apathy: when someone only shows up when they need something, when they vanish during your storms, when they go mute in your pain. That's not friendship. That's not love. That's extraction. And your heart was not made to be a convenience store for the selfish. And when someone only comes knocking during your storms, but disappears when skies are clear, that's not loyalty. That's convenience in disguise. Have you noticed? The moment they're in trouble, the moment life turns against them, suddenly your phone lights up. Their voice returns, their memory of you resurfaces, but it's not because they miss your laughter, not because they cherish your presence. It's because they need something, your strength, your time, your help. And that kind of attention, it's not rooted in love. It's rooted in self-interest. It hurts, doesn't it? To realize someone's check-in wasn't about your heart, but about your hands. Not about how you're doing, but what you can do. They don't reach for connection, they reach for convenience, and once they've received what they came for, they vanish. Again. Let's call it what it is. Transaction, not relationship. You see, people who only remember you in their crisis never truly valued you in their calm. They admired your strength, not your soul. They appreciated your service, not your spirit. You were a solution, not a someone. But God sees you differently. He never defines you by your usefulness. He treasures you because of your identity. Remember the story of the prodigal son. When he returned home with nothing left, his father didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't demand repayment. He embraced him, not for what he brought, but for who he was. That's how real love works. It's not performance-based. It's not demand-driven. It's rooted in presence, not profit. Sadly, today, many treat others like vending machines. Push a few buttons, get what you want, then walk away. And when nothing comes out, they kick it. They blame it. They leave. But you, child of God, are not a machine. You are not here to endlessly pour out for people who never pour back in. You are not someone's last resort while they ignore your daily pain. It's not selfish to notice these patterns. It's not rude to set boundaries. It's wise. Even Jesus, full of compassion, withdrew from the crowds. He protected his peace. He didn't let everyone have access to his strength all the time. He poured out with purpose. So should you. Be wary of sudden affection that comes only when someone is desperate, when they disappear during your pain, but suddenly reappear with smiles when they need a favor. That's not a miracle. That's manipulation. It's a cycle that repeats unless you break it, and I know it's hard to confront this truth, especially when the one doing it is close. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's someone you believed in, someone you would have gone to war for, yet now they won't even lift a finger for you. That truth stings, but it will also set you free. You were not created to be a doormat. You were not designed to be drained dry. God made you with sacred purpose, with time that matters, with energy that has value, with a heart that deserves to be honored. So if someone only comes around when they're in need, believe them the first time. Don't give your very best to someone who only ever shows up at their worst. Real love is steady. It shows up when no one's watching. It checks in without an agenda. It listens without rushing. It stays when there's nothing to gain. That kind of love exists. But you won't find it in people who only remember your name when they're in crisis. Be kind, yes. Be generous, of course, but also be wise. Love with discernment. Give without slavery. And serve without sacrificing your dignity, because someone who truly cares doesn't wait until they need you to value you. They walk beside you, they make space for you, they choose you, even when you have nothing left to offer. Don't confuse. Demand with devotion, and don't confuse presence during panic with the presence that stays through peace. You deserve more than convenience. You deserve covenant.